I decided to flip my bioscience classroom really because I was disappointed in the exam grades that we'd seen over the years, and that's not a reflection of the students, it's really a reflection of the way that I think I was teaching. I was giving students in their final exam a kind of problem that they just hadn't had that much experience in solving. And I realized that as long as I just kept on lecturing all the time, even though I was asking them questions in the lectures, they just weren't getting enough practice answering the kind of problems that I was setting them in the final exam. So that's when I decided that I had to spend more time in class dealing with those kinds of problems. That was when I really seized on the whole flipping idea. Well, what I did was really adapt something that I'd heard from Wolfgang Müller in Earth Sciences at a previous learning and teaching symposium in college. What I did was to basically record half of my lectures as screencasts, and I did that using the technology that college already had, the Panopto system. So I sat in my office, in this very office, over the summer and recorded half of my lecture material as screencast. And I used a tablet, a bamboo tablet, to scribble on the PowerPoint slides as I talked, to make it a bit more engaging for the students. So then before every class session I asked students to watch that screencast and to do a quiz, a multi-choice quiz, which I did on Moodle, which covered the material that I'd covered in the screencast, to encourage them to actually watch it. And then in the class, in the live session, I talked, so I gave a lecture for the first half, 50 minutes. So they still got some live lecturing from me, because I think that lecturing is still important. It's still a great way of communicating enthusiasm for the topic and teaching material. It's fine. So I still give them that. But then in the second half of the session, I devoted entirely to problem solving. So I would give them problems through a system called Learning Catalytics, and I got the money for that through a teaching initiative grant from college, and that allowed them to have access to this system. And I wrote a bunch of questions, as well as recording screencasts. I wrote a bunch of questions in Learning Catalytics. And these weren't just multi-choice questions, these were the kinds of questions I was going to set them in the final exam. All sorts of questions, short answer questions, graphical questions, data analysis. I think it has about over 20 different kinds of problems that you can set in this system. And I would send them out, and they would read the questions on the screen and also on their phones, on their whatever device they brought to the session. And then they would discuss the question in small groups. I would wander around the class, listening in, making a few suggestions here and there, but for the most part just letting them get on with it. And then they would answer, and then up on the screen I would put a summary of their answers, and then we'd discuss how it went. And of course, if everyone had got it right, there's not that much to say, but more often people, at least some people, get it wrong, and you can identify the kinds of misconceptions that they might be having, the problems. And also with this system, there was a useful button that they could press, which was I don't get it. So you can actually see in real time whether students were actually understanding what I was saying, whether they were getting the drift of my argument or not. And so that was really useful too. And then at the end of the course, they had all of these problems and all of their answers available on Learning Catalytics to use for revision. And I think that was useful as well. Well, the outcome was that, first of all, the students really enjoyed the approach. I didn't get any negative feedback I was expecting some, but I didn't get any negative feedback from the flipped aspect of the course. They enjoyed, apparently, watching the videos, and they particularly enjoyed the problem-solving sessions. So the student feedback improved, and perhaps more importantly, the outcomes improved as well. So I went from about an 80% pass rate overall in the course in the previous year to over 90% pass rate last year, which is when I flipped the classroom. Obviously that's just 1 year's data, and we can't say for sure whether that improvement was due to the new teaching approach, but we'll see. You know, I'm going to try it again this year, and hopefully that'll be replicated. The obstacles that people might encounter if they wanted to replicate this would first of all be that there's a certain time commitment, not so much in recording your lectures as screencasts, that's fairly quick, but in writing questions. You know, it's quite difficult to write a good question. You can find questions, and in fact I did find a lot of my questions or adapt them from textbooks. Particularly the big American textbooks, they have loads of end-of-chapter problems which you can adapt. So it wasn't too bad, and in fact I started writing more questions than I needed because I wanted to be prepared. I didn't know how long it would take for them to answer them. So I started writing 10 questions for each session, but it turned out that we only got through about half of those, so I could reduce the amount of time later on that I spent writing questions. But that's the main time commitment, and then I guess there's also the question of changing style, and some people might not be comfortable in stopping lecturing and just letting the students work more. I think for some people that's a bit of a challenge. But once you've done it a few times and the students don't start rioting and you get good feedback, then you're more confident. So I guess that's reassuring.